Bryce, the channel. Welcome back to another reaction video. We got the Carolina Panthers' worst days are officially behind them. Let's check this
The
out.
Carolina Panthers finished the 2024 season with a 5-12 record and missed the playoffs for the 7th straight year.
Can we find our best version of us, our best football, and it's still out there for us.
And 2024 was the definition of an up-and-down year for the Panthers. It started about as bad as one could have possibly imagined, as they were outscored 73-13 in the first two games of the year, which led to the benching of 2023 #1 overall pick Bryce Young.
18 starts into his NFL career. Bryce Young is getting benched.
To make matters worse for Carolina, CJ Stroud, the #2 pick in the 23 draft, has played well throughout his NFL career, and immediately after benching Bryce Young, the Panthers put up 36 points on the road in a win over the Raiders, which was the most points this team had scored since Bryce Young was drafted.
I mean, it's not his fault, bro. Let's keep it a buck.
It was a very low time for the Panthers organization, and especially when you factor in everything they gave up to go get Bryce Young in the first place. But the NFL season is a marathon and not a sprint, and in the final 10 games of 2024, Bryce Young had 20 total touchdowns to just 6 interceptions, and the Panthers went 4-6. And I know the 4-6 part doesn't sound great, but their defense last year was horrific. And whenever you think about the 2024 Panthers, you usually think about the downfall and the re-rise of Bryce Young, and not how bad the defense was. And when you factor in what the Panthers did this offseason, well, this all plays into why the Panthers' worst days are officially behind them. And in today's video, we're going to break down why the 2025 Panthers season should be a foundation for a better tomorrow. And before we start, if you could take a second to like the video, I would really appreciate it. It helps the channel tremendously. And without further ado, let's begin.
Alright. Football season right around the corner, bro.
And we are starting today's video by discussing who the Panthers brought in this offseason and who they lost this offseason prior to the NFL draft. The biggest thing the Panthers had to do, as simple as this idea is, was bring in better football players, period. There are countless bad stats for the 2024 Panthers defense, and to give you an idea of how bad they were at times, well, they finished dead last in defensive DVOA and EPA per play,
J.C.
as well
Horn
as dead
getting
last in
blurred
both
by
points
Quinn
allowed and total
Johnston.
yards allowed too. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that they spent a lot of money in free agency to raise the floor of this roster. I know the Panthers certainly are not a star-studded roster at this point in time, but they're in a pretty good situation from a salary cap standpoint. The highest paid player on their roster in 2025 will be Taylor Moton, an offensive tackle, and the second highest will be
I ain't gonna lie, bro. The 3 out of the 5 is offensive lineman. I love to see that.
Guard at 21.6
2 years ago, that old line
because
was
they have a quarterback
fried.
on a rookie
Holy
contract,
shit.
as well as several other positions on rookie contracts too, like left tackle Ika Mekwanu, receiver Xavier Legette, and even corner J.C. Horn with his contract extension not kicking in until next year. Well, Carolina had a lot of money to spend. They brought in several free agents, but the 3 biggest they brought in were Trayvon Merrick, a safety from the Raiders, Tershawn Wharton, a defensive tackle from the Chiefs, and Patrick Jones, an edge rusher from the Vikings.
I ain't gonna lie.
Now,
I feel like Pat Jones was one of the most underrated signings of last year, bro. You know what I'm saying? Well, this offseason. That nigga had 7 sacks while playing behind Jonathan Gennard and Andrew Van Ginkel, who both had double-digit sacks. I ain't gonna lie. I feel like him, along with the 2 rookies that they drafted, and Nick Score and Prince Lumami Yellen, they might be getting pressure this year, bro. I'm not going to hold you.
I don't think they're going to turn the defense completely around by any means, but they are going to help raise the floor and help this defense simply not be as bad as it was last year. I also really like Ejiro Rivero, the Panthers DC, but also think it's more than fair to say he was set up for failure last year, and then some. The Panthers couldn't consistently get after the quarterback last year, and it was unfortunate DJ Wanham missed a good chunk of the 2024 season due to injury, but I do want to credit Carolina for actively trying to fix the problem. And out of the free agents they signed, I like Trayvon Merrick and Bobby Brown the most for this defense. Merrick is only 26 years old and is an above-average player. He will help this secondary be a lot better than they were last year, and I think Carolina has 2 spots in the secondary taken care of for the next few years in J.C. Horn and now Merrick. The only thing I would say about Merrick that can be taken negatively, even though it's not meant to be, is he's a good, not great player. And I know the expectations of signing a player to a $50 million contract in free agency here. And I know the expectations of...
Who the fuck just got put on their ass like that?
Signing a player to a $50 million contract in free agency. But if you go into the year with reasonable expectations for a solid player,
is that Damian Williams?
I do think Carolina slightly overpaid for him, and for Tershawn Wharton too for that matter, but the thing I will always go back to in free agency is, will Carolina not be able to pay anyone because of these signings? And the answer is no. So even if they did overpay a bit, they'll be fine. Bobby Brown is a run-stuffing defensive tackle, and good luck trying to run up the middle with him and a healthy Derek Brown out there at the same time.
Derek Brown
they also brought in running back Rico Dowdle, who ran for over 1,000 yards with Dallas last year. And for the players they lost in free agency, well, remember, they were not a talented team last year, especially defensively, so they didn't lose that much to begin with. They lost safety Xavier Woods, who signed with the Titans, corner Lonnie Johnson, and tight end Ian Thomas, as well as punter Johnny Hecker. And only one of those players signed a contract north of $2 million, to give you an idea of not just what I think, but what the other 31 NFL teams thought about these players when free agency rolled around. Now, I know we've mentioned the 2024 Panthers defense quite a bit throughout the video so far, but what should we expect from the 25 Panthers defense? The biggest thing, of course, is improvement, as this defense was historically bad last year. They allowed 400 yards or more in 9 of the 17 games they played. And the only game they did not allow 300 yards was, funnily enough, against the Super Bowl champion Eagles in Week 14. Opposing quarterbacks threw 35 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions against the Panthers last year, and they also allowed over 3,000 yards rushing during the 2024 season. And one of the biggest things for the Panthers entering 2025 will be getting former first-round defensive tackle Derek Brown back. He only played in 1 game last year before suffering a season-ending injury, and not to say Derek Brown would have magically fixed everything with how bad the Panthers' defense was last year, but what I will say is I don't think it's a coincidence the 2023 Panthers, for as bad as they were as a team, finished 12th in average yards per carry against. And it's also not a coincidence Derek Brown set an NFL record for the defensive tackle position for tackles in a season with 103. So getting him back and healthy is step 1 to getting this defense back on track. Step 2 is going to require the perimeter run defenders to set a hard edge and to force the opposing run game back into the teeth of the defense. And this is where I think DJ Wonnum can play a decent role with the 25 Panthers. If Carolina can get into those 3rd and 7+ situations, then this team should improve by default, at least from where they were. We'll discuss the 2025 rookie class in depth more in a minute, but I absolutely love what the Panthers did in this draft, and if they can have Nick Scorton, Princely Umanmielen, Patrick Jones, and Tershawn Wharton all get after the quarterback in designated pass rushing downs, then I like where the foundation of this team is for 2025 and beyond. Keyword there being the foundation, meaning I don't think it'll be a finished product this year by any means, not even close. But the Panthers had one player have over 30 pressures last year, and it was a 31-year-old Jadeveon Clowney. I know we did acknowledge
I want my Ravens to bring Clowney back, bro.
But the point is, Carolina couldn't defend the run last year, they couldn't defend the pass, and they couldn't get after the quarterback either. No matter what they called during the 2024 season, with the lack of talent they had on the roster, they were still going to be one of the worst defenses in the league. And I look forward to seeing the changes they implement this year. We've said this about other units and other teams, but Rome was not built in a day, and I do expect the Panthers' run defense to monumentally change this year. And going from allowing 3,000 rushing yards in a year to being even league average would be a night and day's difference. Now, I will be honest, I am underwhelmed by the 2025 Panthers linebackers, and this goes back to the Rome quote, because you can only do so much in one offseason. Trevin Wallace is a really good athlete who makes splash plays, but the consistency isn't there, and I don't think the instincts are either, and I wasn't the biggest Trevin Wallace fan in the pre-draft process last year, due in some part to this. Christian Roseboom is a 1-year stopgap starter, and the hope is he has a good year. But for as excited as I am with the improvements Carolina made this offseason, specifically with the run defense, there's still a long way to go. I'm also very underwhelmed with the secondary outside of J.C. Horn and Trayvon Merrick. This is a defense that's going to do a lot of bending and not breaking, but there is still a long way to go. Barring health, of course, this unit will improve, as it's hard to get worse than what they were last year, but the back 7 of this defense really concerns me. And I think there's multiple players who are going to be complete liabilities for the defense this year. And after the first few defensive players, I think the drop-off is pretty substantial. The defense will improve, obviously, but for a defensive ranking this year, I think they'll be in the 23 to 26 range.
Rookie impact. Yeah, their rookie draft was phenomenal.
The Carolina Panthers should have pretty substantial rookie impact, and for transparency, they were one of 3 teams that I gave an A+.
And it's crazy how much their wide receiver core improved, bro. They already had Leggett, you know what I'm saying, who I feel like is going to take a big step up. And I saw a crazy clip of bro at training camp as well. They drafted T-Mac, Jimmy Horn, brought in Hunter Renfrow. Like, I ain't gonna lie, Bryce got a lot of weapons to throw to now. So I feel like this year should be no excuses, bro. You know what I'm saying? He got his confidence back. I just hope he can pick up right where he left off from
the
last
Patriots
year.
and the Seahawks. And whenever they selected
he got his confidence
in the first
back now.
round, number 8
That's
overall,
all he really
I
needed,
audibly screamed yes, because of what that meant for Tetero McMillan, Bryce Young, Dave Canales, and Panthers fans, knowing that they were going to get a legit wide receiver 1 for what should be not just a year or two, but if he stays healthy, it should really be the next 5 or 6 years. There are very, very few flaws in his game, and I thought this was the classic definition of
he got to learn how to separate,
and
though.
We're talking about a receiver who went for back-to-back 1,300-yard seasons, and a guy who wins more contested catches than he doesn't. And T-Mac is also not just a 6'4" receiver that's a really clunky 6'4" that can really only run fade routes and slants and kind of uses his body to shield defenders off within slant routes because he's a big-bodied, slow receiver. He's not that. He's actually really, really fluid as a receiver, and he compares very favorably to another receiver in this division in Drake London. T-Mac, to me, was the perfect representation of what prospect fatigue is every year, and there were so many reports and rankings of T-Mac being the 4th or 5th best receiver on a team's board, and there were mocks where he'd fall into the late 20s, and I never understood
it was crazy how much disrespect T-Mac was getting. Bro, it's crazy. Like, the nigga had back-to-back 1,300 plus yard seasons and still getting disrespected. Like, come on, bro. Like, was he the only receiver last year to have a game where he had over 300 yards receiving? And that was in week 1. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm kind of excluding Travis Hunter from that because he is such a unique one-of-one player, but T-Mac to me will probably have 800 yards in his rookie year, and in 2026 have 1,000 yards for what should be the first time he has 1,000 of multiple times in his career. Now, I did have T-Mac at number 8 on my personal top 150. He was drafted at 8, so great job by the Panthers there in terms of value, but where they really did a phenomenal job was the 2nd and 3rd rounds by drafting Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen. I had Nick Scorton at player 22 on my personal big board, and the Panthers selected him in the 2nd round. Scorton to me was one of my favorite prospects in the entire 2025 draft. This was a player that had 40 plus pressures for Purdue at age 19 during the 2023 season, and I am willing to dismiss a lot of Scorton's 2024 season at A&M because they had him bulk up from the 257 to 260
and like,
area,
bro, the way A&M used they edge rushers, bro, was just hella weird, my nigga. Like, they had both him and Shamar Stewart just mainly setting the edge, you know what I'm saying?
And inevitably, when
they
you
weren't
put
really
on
rushing the
25
passer
pounds,
like
especially
that.
at a position where you
Bro
need
still had 5
explosiveness
sacks
in the uttermost way, it's going to affect how you play. And in the pre-draft process, Scorton had actually came back down to the 257 to 260 area, and again, he will be just 21 years old at the start of the 25 season, and actually at the time of this video release, he is just 20 years old, so I really think that the sky is the limit for him, and he's also a pretty good run defender despite being 260 pounds, and he also presents a really good spin move as a pass rusher, and I am really, really excited for Nick Scorton and the idea of him in this Panthers defense for the next couple of years, along with who I think should be a designated pass rusher in 2025 in 3rd round selection, Princely Umanmielen. Princely Umanmielen is a player I will never understand why he fell to the middle of the 3rd round in the 2025 draft, and I think this is a player that can come in and have 25 or 30 pressures as a rookie, and maybe even 40 pressures in year 2 and have 7 or 8 sacks in 2026 and be a legit starter opposite of Nick Scorton. This is a player that checked a lot of boxes last year for Ole Miss. He had 50 plus pressures in the SEC. He had double-digit sacks in the SEC, and he also won in a variety of ways. This was not a one-trick pony where if you stop as bull rush, then you take him entirely out of his game. He's also a pretty solid run defender in his own right, and I thought that this was a player that resembled a young Zadarius Smith. And where the Panthers drafted their first 3 selections in Tetero McMillan, Nick Scorton, and Princely Umanmielen, compared to where I had them on my board, was a plus. I mean, it was a significant plus draft valuation. I personally had Tetero McMillan at player 8, and they drafted him at player 8, and then I had Nick Scorton at player 22, and they drafted him at 51, and then I had Princely Umanmielen at player 77, and when you add all of those up, you have a draft positive valuation of 54, as that was 136 cumulatively by adding 8, 51, and 77 to where I had them on each of my board. And for the Panthers to walk out of this draft with 3 top 52 players, a lot of people had Nick Scorton like
having only once in the first round in some mock drafts
too. 51, was a tremendous job for Dan Morgan to, as simple as this idea is, improve the roster from where they were. I think there's a non-zero chance that this team walked out of the 25 draft with a perennial 1,000-yard receiver and a player that could have not just one, but multiple double-digit sack seasons in Nick Scorton, and a player that will be a consistent pass-rushing threat in Princely Umanmielen. The Panthers' next 4 selections in running back Trevor Etienne, safety Lathan Ransom, defensive tackle Cam Jackson, and tight end Mitchell Evans are probably not going to have that much rookie impact. And with Trevor Etienne specifically, I would imagine he's going to be a rotational back throughout the majority of his rookie contract. He'll get some touches here, some touches there, but I would never say that, hey, Trevor Etienne is going to be a 1,000-yard back in 26 or 27 or whatever the case may be. And you also have to remember that, at least I hope at some point, that we get Jonathan Brooks back. He's had an unfortunate stretch of injury luck, and
yeah, I feel like, bro, they rushed him back, you know what I'm saying, like later in the year. Like, I think it was like, what was it, like week 13 or something like that? He came back and then he re-tore his ACL. I feel like they should have kept him out for the whole year, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? There was no reason to bring him back. You had Chuba Hubbard, you know what I'm saying, playing really good. So I feel like you should have just kept him out for the rest of the year, and then this year right here would have been a great, you know what I'm saying, time to, you know, evaluate him and Chuba Hubbard as a great 1-2 punch. You know what I'm saying?
Gets healthy and we get to see the maximization of him at some point in his career.
I guess we'll have to wait till next year.
I don't think he's going to play that much as a rookie, though. I think there is a path for him to start.
Ransom give me old school.
Hopefully, we have a safety
vibes,
duo
bro.
of him and Trayvon Merrick. That would be one of the hardest hitting safety duos in the NFL, and that would be very fun for Panthers to sit back and watch on Sundays. With Cam Jackson, this is also going to be a player buried on the depth charts behind Derek Brown and Bobby Brown. And respectfully to Cam Jackson, we've said this throughout the team preview series so far, but in some ways you kind of hope he doesn't play, because if he does, then that means Derek Brown is hurt again or Bobby Brown is a bust of a free agent signing, and you get the point. With Mitchell Evans, I don't think the Panthers tight end room is all that good to begin with, and I hope that Jatavian Sanders can take a step in 2025, but again, he's going to be a guy buried on the depth chart, and the same also applies to Jimmy Horn, the receiver from Colorado, who I do believe was an underrated prospect throughout the 2025 draft, and that I think there could be a path for him in 2026, but I don't think there's going to be that much rookie impact from any of the day 3 selections, and they were day 3 picks to begin with, but I absolutely loved what the Panthers did by drafting Tetairoa McMillan, Nick Scorton, and Princely Umanmielen with the first 3 picks in the 25 draft, and that is due in large part as to why they received one of 3 A+ draft grades. The 2025 Panthers offense has to start by talking about the elephant in the room, which is now third-year quarterback Bryce Young. I was a Bryce Young defender entering 2024, and there was a video that I posted about a year ago, it was last June when it came out, of how the Panthers set Bryce Young up to fail, and it was discussing his offensive line and the lack of receivers getting open during the 2023 season, and I had hopes for Bryce Young in 2024. And what's crazy, bro,
that, hey, people, like, I hate when people try to call players draft busts after 1 year. You know what I'm saying? Not everybody can come in and have like a CJ Stroud type rookie year, or a Jaden Daniels type rookie year where he takes his team to the NFC Championship game. Not every player is generational enough to do that. It takes time. It takes like 2, 3, maybe even 4 years for a player to finally lock in and, you know what I'm saying, break out. You gotta give players time, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, not everybody can just come in and go crazy, throw for 3,000, 4,000 yards with like 30+ touchdowns. You know what I'm saying?
Went out and spent $150 million on Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis in free agency, and that we were going to not necessarily take the league over with Bryce Young and the Panthers, but he was going to play better and he was going to be more than a serviceable player. And that eventually did come true, but the first 2 weeks of 2024 were awful. There's no sugarcoating that. And very rarely on the channel will I say that, hey, this player was flat out bad. Now, I will acknowledge that I say situations are not great and situations are bad, because whether a team is, you know, about to fire a head coach or a GM and what their plan is moving forward, but very rarely will I say that a player is downright bad. But Bryce Young in the first 2 games of 2024 was bad. He was just 31 of 56 for 245 yards, threw no touchdowns, and had 3 interceptions, and had a passer rating of just 44.1. He was not good, he was not average, he was unplayable. And I think the play that summarizes the Bryce Young experience in the early parts of 2024 was the 3rd down against the Chargers early in the game, when he rolled out to the backside, had a clear path to throw the ball away on 3rd and 7 at the 36-yard line, and when he should have thrown the ball away, he took an 8-yard sack to take the Panthers out of field goal range. Bryce Young was benched after the game, and in the first 2 games, like we mentioned earlier in the video, the Panthers were outscored 73-13. It was a very low time for the Panthers organization. How long was Bryce Young going to last? How long was Dan Morgan going to last as the GM? How long was Dave Canales just 2 games in, and a large reason as to why he took the job was because of Bryce Young in the first place? How long was he going to last as the team's head coach? Was he going to be another one and done, especially with the impatience from owner David Tepper? There were a lot of uncertainties surrounding the Panthers after 2 weeks, but later in the year, unfortunately due to Andy Dalton being in a car crash, Bryce Young received another chance to play, and fortunately and thankfully Andy Dalton is okay, though I do sit back and wonder what the plan was going to be if that did not happen, because there was no communication from the Panthers at all saying, hey, we're targeting a Week 12 or Week 14 comeback for Bryce Young, and I do sometimes wonder what would have transpired if that never happened. But again, thankfully
that
Andy
is
Dalton's okay,
crazy
and
though,
that
bro.
we are heading into 2025 with a healthy Bryce Young and a healthy Andy Dalton. But in the final 10 games, Bryce Young looked like the Alabama Bryce Young. And aside from just looking at
Hopefully
the
he
final
can
10
look
games
like
versus
Heisman
his
Bryce
rookie
Young
season
this
and
year.
asking what the difference
You know
was,
what I'm
the
saying?
big difference was Bryce Young's comfortability within the pocket, and he was maneuvering the pocket up and down, and he wasn't afraid to stand in the face of pressure and make difficult throws. And I thought Bryce played really well in the Chiefs and Eagles game, and there was one play in particular near the half against the Chiefs where Kansas City was running a cover 2, and the Panthers were running a bench concept where one receiver was running a corner route and one was running a quick out route. So obviously in a cover 2, that's going to put the corner in the flat in a bind of whether or not he's going to try and defend the corner, which would have been a touchdown, or whether he's going to stay and defend the flat. Meanwhile, in the process of this, Chris Jones, yes, that Chris Jones, the 6'6", 310-pound Chris Jones, beats the right guard right off the line, and Bryce stands in the pocket, never wavering under pressure, and delivers an absolute dime to Jatavian Sanders.
That's that confidence
That
I
was the
talking
difference
about.
between 2024 Bryce Young after he came back and 2023 Bryce Young in the first 2 games of 2024 Bryce Young. And to give you another idea of just the statistical impact of Bryce under pressure in 24 versus who he was in 23, well, he threw 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions under pressure last year, compared to just 1 touchdown to 4 interceptions under pressure in his rookie season. And there's also a stat on Pro Football Focus called big time throws and turnover worthy plays. And whenever you
I
are
forgot
under
about
pressure,
Adam
obviously
Thielen,
the
too.
turnover worthy plays are going to
bad,
be
OG.
higher because it's a lot more difficult to make a throw with somebody like Chris Jones right in your face versus having a clean empty pocket. But Bryce under pressure in 2024 had 12 big-time throws under pressure to just 5 turnover-worthy plays, compared to 5 big-time throws under pressure in 2023 to 14 turnover-worthy plays in 2023. So the difference was night and day, and I also look at the Eagles
Jalen
game,
Coker as
specifically
well.
when the Panthers
Like,
were
bro,
3-9 and had
Bro, the Panthers got plethora of weapons, bro. There's no reason y'all should not be at least solid this year,
absolutely
bro.
nothing to play
Damn.
for, and Bryce led what should have been a game-winning drive. Now, we'll talk about Xavier
Niggas
again
done
more in
got
a
so
second.
many weapons now,
Obviously, you guys
I'm
know the play
forgetting
that
the
I'm
player from
referring to,
last
but
year.
Bryce did everything within his power to give the Panthers a chance to win in what should have been a road victory over the future Super Bowl
Coker
champions.
had a
Now,
pretty
one
solid
thing I
rookie year.
definitively will not do is get into the Bryce Young quarterback ranking conversation where I think he will be in 2025, but what I will say is this. They averaged 24.8 points per game as an offense in the final 7 games of last year, and that included games against Kansas City and Philly, and while they did only put up 16 points against Philly, I still thought Bryce Young played pretty well in that game, and aside from one bad game against Dallas, I thought the Panthers offense looked really well towards the end of the 24 season, and whenever you factor in they brought in a first-round receiver in Teteroa McMillan, I really like the outlook for the 2025 Panthers offense. And that 24.8 points per game that they averaged during the final 7 games would have ranked between 10th and 11th out of all 32 NFL teams last year. So whenever you factor everything in, the continuity, Bryce Young staying at the level, or maybe even getting better at the level that he played at down the stretch of the 24 season, along with upgrading the receiver position, I do think this offense could finish anywhere in that 12 to 17 area this year. I also like the running back room for what it is with Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, and I think Chuba Hubbard is kind of an underrated player, especially when you are on a team that finishes below 500 and you still have the year that Chuba Hubbard had last year. And unfortunately for Chuba specifically, in a year where guys like Derrick Henry and Saquon and Jahmyr Gibbs and everybody else eats the way that they did, naturally you're not going to be talked about. But I think that is a pretty solid running back duo, especially behind that offensive line talked about. But
that nigga averaged damn near 5 yards a carry. Oh yeah, he finna go off for like 1,400 yards this year.
That is a pretty solid running back duo, especially behind that offensive line.
I ain't know that.
So I like where the Panthers offense is, all things considered.
4.8 yards a carry.
Now, for second-year receiver Xavier Legette, the biggest thing, of course, is drops. He had 8 drops on 81 targets last year, and he finished the year with about 500 receiving yards. And the opportunity for him to have at least 620
faster
yards
in
last
training
year
camp
was there, and I think the opportunity will be there.
Yeah,
for
caught
him
like
this
what,
year.
a slant or
And
something.
as simple as this is,
to
it's going to come down to him capitalizing on the opportunity. He has a role in this offense. He can be that Z receiver. He can be the guy to run go routes, deep crossers, post routes, quick slants. He doesn't have to run those backside digs like Tetero and McMillan will in this offense. He can be kind of that, not gadget player, but that number 2 receiver that makes big plays and is a big splash receiver, because Xavier is a really, really fast receiver despite weighing over 220 pounds. So he can be that big, fast, physical receiver, and as long as he can hang on to the football at a better rate than he did last year, there's no reason to think that he can't have 700 or 750 yards this year. The rest of the receiving core is, I don't want to say a hodgepodge of guys, but I do like Adam Thielen at this point in his career at 35 years old. He can still be a good route running receiver that can get open and find space underneath, and I wouldn't expect any deep balls to Adam Thielen, or at least not many deep balls at this point in his career, because the speed obviously isn't where it once was, and even in his prime, Thielen was not exactly a burner, though he was faster than people give him credit for. Sneaky fast, some could say. But Thielen's still a solid player at this point, and he is the type of mentor that you want in this locker room to help Tetero and McMillan transition to the NFL and to help Xavier Legette overcome the early struggles that he had in 2024. The rest of the receiving core is led by Hunter Renfrow, then Jimmy Horn Jr., and of course we cannot forget Jalen Coker and David Moore, and I wouldn't expect all that much of a statistical impact from really any of those guys unless any of Tetero and McMillan, Xavier Legette, or Adam Thielen go down, but I do like the depth that this receiving room has. Ultimately, I think a successful year for this offense would have them finish in the 12 to 14 range and to have a legit connection between Bryce Young, Tetero McMillan, and Xavier Legette as we head into 2026. I think this team's ceiling this year is going to be around 7 wins, and what I want to reaffirm is that Rome was not built overnight, and that the team is not going to go from the number 8 pick to the number 32 pick in the draft in
the
1
NFC
year.
South starting
I really like where this team is,
maybe,
and I can't wait to see where they are
again,
in 2026. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like the video and subscribe to the channel, as we are closing in at 200,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for the support. Until next time, please be safe and have a great day. Love you guys.
Man. I feel like, bro, the Panthers definitely going to be more entertaining to watch this year. I might, like, because I have, like, hot takes every year. And I think my hot takes this year, for, like playoff-wise, I feel like the Titans and the Panthers going to make the playoffs somehow, bro. Somehow, some way that's going to happen. Because we have crazy, you know what I'm saying, teams make the playoffs every year, bro. Because last year, nobody saw the Broncos and the Commanders making the playoffs. Let's keep it a buck. You know what I'm saying? And then the Commanders ended up making it to the NFC Championship game. So I feel like Panthers and Titans, they might end up making the playoffs this year. You never know, bro. But hey, I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Y'all let me know what other NFL videos I want to react to. Without further ado, I'm out.
I'ma make them feel me, make them people when they show me. And if you don't know me, I'ma make sure that you know me. I hate to say it, but I really think I'm broke. But I know I'm chosen, I really know I'm chosen. I know I'm chosen. I was just lost a year ago, but now I'm focused. When good at sports, this microphone can be my trophy. Not taking drugs, I found a better way of coping.